What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show, part of the All-City podcast network. I'm your host, Adam Mares, joining you. Man, everything that could go wrong went wrong on this Monday, a total Monday for us following the Super Bowl. But I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, how you doing today?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I had a like everybody else, I was locked into the Super Bowl and enjoyed it. It was a pretty much, not a lot going on in that game for a while. And then it got incredibly interesting and one of the best finishes we've seen. And just, you watched, greatness at work. That's all I can say. Patrick Mahomes is unbelievable. His poise in those situations are just incredible. So it was a great game. I didn't have a dog in the fight. So it's fun to watch a game like that when you're into the game, but you don't really ultimately emotionally care who wins or loses.
Do you pull for greatness? I think most people, when you don't have a dog in the fight, you kind of pull for, all right, who has the chance to go down as the all-time great? And that's kind of like, I hate the Chiefs, right? I'm a Broncos fan. They're in the division, so they're a rival. But I'm watching the game, and I'm just kind of like in awe of Mahomes.
I same in awe, and I do sometimes. Like, I can't say that as a blanket statement. It depends. If there's something about the greatness, individually, team-wise, the coach, that just gets on my nerves, then it's easier to root against that for that reason. I don't want any more greatness for that person because they just irritate me for some reason. But I hear what you're saying. I do, and that's why I'm a Washington Commanders fan. Everybody knows that. Been my whole life. So I wasn't a New England fan or anything or a Brady fan, but I got news for you. I would pull for Brady when he got into those situations to add to the legacy because it was so fascinating to me, like to be that great consistently and to do it at that level. And so I feel that way about Mahomes. I do. I kind of was pulling for the Niners because I'm an NFC guy. I just kind of root for the NFC team usually. And I like Brock Purdy, that story. So my point was going to be, if I don't root for greatness, I do root for the underdog type guy and the overachiever. And that's how I looked at Brock Purdy. So I was kind of pulling for the Niners, but my gut from the beginning told me Mahomes was going to be the difference. And he was, obviously.
And then enough about that game. How about the Puppy Bowl? That's what the people really want to know.
That's it, man. Listen, it's edge of my seat. Yeah. It was a shootout like it is most years, a shootout. It has a little bit of everything in that game. Yeah. It's a little nerve-wracking, but best news about it is all those puppies are already adopted, going to their homes once the game's over. That's the best news.
Well, there you go. Guys, today we are going to talk about this Mavs team. Got their new players, got their new horses, and they looked incredible. We're going to talk about that one. The Warriors starting to look like giving you little flashes of the old Warriors, including a Steph game winner. And then Legler created a list of teams that he thinks are the most interesting, to watch over this final stretch, the home stretch of the regular season. So we're going to talk about all of that on today's show. But first, we're presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code ALLNBA, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, Legs, let's start with this crazy Mavs game. I call it crazy because they scored 47 points in the first quarter. And it wasn't even like it was just one guy or one lineup. The starters started things off. Then you brought in the reinforcements of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, and it took roughly 5 seconds for them to fit in, catching lobs almost immediately. 47 points is a Mavs franchise record for points in a quarter. What stood out to you in this big win?
I'm going to say first a big statement, and I'm not saying, I obviously haven't seen every quarter of basketball played this season, but I watch a lot of basketball, so I've seen a lot of quarters. That's the best offensive quarter I think I've seen a team play. You can't play better than the Mavericks did out of the gate in that game. And you could see right from the beginning, like right off the bat, Dallas gets a stop on the first possession, and you could hear, like you could feel the energy from the crowd. So it was like it almost felt like a finals game for the energy in this building.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lot of reasons. Look, OKC's a really good team.
Yep.
So there's that. It was, they just made the trades. I think a lot of people are excited about the new acquisitions, looking forward to seeing them. And as a result, I just felt like Luka had an incredible bounce and energy at the beginning of this game that he doesn't always have. And he was absolutely sensational. It is as dominant as you can be for an NBA player with his shooting, his driving, and then what he did with his passing toward the last, several minutes of the quarter. You talked about Gafford, PJ Washington, and immediately Luka rewarded those guys as soon as they stepped on the court. But you literally can't. Do you agree? Can you play more perfect offensive basketball than what Dallas did in the first quarter of this game?
Because it was everything. It was half-court offense. It was transition. It was the offensive glass. It was great passing. They made it look. It was a machine. It looked like a machine where they were just doing exactly what they wanted to do on every possession, whether it was transition or not. And the pieces, then you wonder, okay, sometimes it's just a hot start. Guys shoot the ball well and make some shots, and you think, okay, it's got to come back down to earth. But that entire quarter, you sub new guys in, and they just pick up right where the other group left off. So to me, that's what was so impressive about it. And look, this is a game where the Mavs were still missing Lively. The report from Tim McMahon said that he worked out with the team on Saturday, so he is inching closer to a return. Maybe as early as this week he returns, but if not, certainly after the All-Star break, it looks like. So they're already down one of their key pieces, and you look at it and you go, that's a lot of guys. They had a lot of guys, and they just kind of came in waves with a bunch of different guys that can make an impact. And to me, that's what stood out about this game. They haven't been healthy like this, for most of the year. So to be able to see what it looks like when they have all these different pieces, it was impressive.
Well, this is a weird game, by the way. So, Matt, we just described Dallas's first quarter, and as you would expect, as a result, they're up 20+ in the first quarter. And in the second quarter, it gets to 5.
Yeah.
Right. So Oklahoma City basically erases the whole thing, which is how the NBA works anymore. Like it's almost a bad thing to get up that big early. Like, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And of course, they cut it to 5. So you get do you know what the biggest lead was in the first quarter? I know it was more than 20. Was it like 22 or 24, something like that? Then it went to 5 and it ended up 35. So it was a weird game.
Right.
Basically, Dallas basically withstood that run in the middle by Oklahoma City, and Shea was great during that. And they cut into, but then Dallas just basically mows them down again in the second half. Here's a couple things that I noticed about this game. And I was shocked when I was up in Bristol on Thursday for the trading deadline and the work that I was doing up there. And I was on a lot of shows talking about the trades, and it seemed like all anybody wanted to talk about was the Knicks. And yes, the Knicks got better. We agree. Yeah. Knicks got better. There's no doubt. You had Burks and Bogdanovich, and they're already had created a lot of buzz coming in to the All-Star, to the trading deadline, and then they added guys, right? We get it. But every time I'd get asked questions from producers, who are the big winners? Besides the Knicks. And I was surprised that some of these shows I went on, like they weren't looking at Dallas. I put Dallas second on the list as big winner that day. And I said, I thought these were really important acquisitions for this team. And you saw it in this game. It's a one-game sample size, but the difference that Gafford presents for this team in the middle as opposed to what they have. Because, look, I like Lively a lot. Lively is basically going to catch lob dunks. That's primarily what he's going to do. And then you've got Kleba, who's playing. He's weird because I thought he's undersized. He's the exact same size as Daniel Gafford, and he plays like he's a 6'7" guy, and Gafford plays like he's a 7'1" guy. But they're both 6'10". And Kleba, what does he do? He mostly pick and pops. And he plays hard, don't get me wrong. He's a good defender and he offensive rebounds and stuff. But I'm talking about just his way of making shots. He's going to pick and pop. He's going to shoot threes. Gafford is skilled, man. Gafford can dive, catch it on the short roll, one bounce, jump stop, go up, finish over a guy. Like that smooth gather and go up. He can obviously catch lobs, super athletic. He's got a nice little shooting touch out to a certain distance. So I looked at him when he left Washington. He plays so hard every night. And I just thought this was a massive addition for a team that needs something like this in the middle. And he's going to play with the best playmaker he's ever played with in his life. And you saw it immediately, the way Luka was rewarding him. The guy played 17 minutes and went 7 for 11 from the field. 19 points, 9 boards in 17 minutes. And then PJ Washington, same thing. I said, I think this is an upgrade over Grant Williams. He's just a better offensive player. And he's not like maybe even give up anything defensively. He's more athletic, I think, than Grant Williams is defensively. Positionally, Grant Williams is a little bit better, like throws his body in front of guys, takes charges and that. But PJ Washington can get up off the floor a little bit better. So I just thought I thought it was very understated on Thursday. Everything I was looking at, the impact that these two guys were going to have for the Mavericks, because I loved it. And It's one game, but it was a big game against a really good team. And those two guys played sensationally. And that's the best the Mavs have looked all year. So, there's some correlation there. So this is going to be a very interesting storyline for me going forward with Dallas, the way that they looked in their first game and the impact that they're going to have going forward.
By the way, PJ Washington, a plus 24 off the bench in his 24 minutes, which is huge, 14 points, 5 rebounds. But I want to go back to Gafford, and 2 of the points you brought up there I found especially interesting. 1, 4 offensive rebounds in 17 minutes. And that was after the game, Jason Kidd talked about it. Seems like every time we played him, he was killing us on the offensive board, so we knew he was going to bring that to the team. And he had one in particular, one that just the whole crowd went crazy. You talked about playoff atmosphere. I felt like he brought a certain energy to the game that everybody fed off of. Now, they were up big by the time he checked in because, as I mentioned, the starting lineup really, really played well. But that is something, this no knock on Grant Williams, but I don't know if he had that effect on the team. And sometimes, especially in a team like Luka, I know a lot of people, one of the reasons I'm sure your producers didn't ask you about Dallas, everybody likes names. Do you get a name? Have I heard that name before? Is it a star player? But sometimes you have Luka, you have Kyrie. Those are your names. Now you need guys that are going to do the things you need. And Gafford, to me, brings an energy and intensity that I think elevates guys like Luka. And it's something that team needed worse than whatever it was Grant Williams was bringing.
Not fair. And I didn't, I don't know how much of it's true, but you heard things after the trade that he had ruffled some feathers, that he just wasn't like connecting to people. And I didn't get that vibe from him in Boston at all. I thought what he was bringing to them, to the Mavericks, they desperately needed. They needed another guy that took that end of the floor seriously and gave up his body. And I thought, based on how he had shot the ball in Boston, I thought he's going to get better shots in Dallas playing with Luka, and so he'll be a better 3-point shooter than he was in Boston. That just wasn't the case, man. For whatever reason, it didn't work. And give the Mavs credit because they recognized it, and they didn't just, sometimes you make a move like that, you bring a guy in, and if you're the guy that's making the main decision to do that, you're going to just give them all kinds of opportunities to like prove that you're right. And they didn't waste any time. It just wasn't working, and they went out and they improved their team. And I was saying the same thing about Bogdanovich and Burks in New York, going to New York. I'm like, can you imagine the new lease on life given to these 4 players, leaving Detroit and Washington? Like, and what that year looks like, what the morale looks like in the building, the atmosphere at the games. And now all of a sudden, boom, like you're out and you walk into a building the first day with the electricity of the Garden, with the electricity of what's going on in Dallas, and playing with a guy like Luka, like right off the bat, the very first pass he threw Gafford, like the look on Gafford's face, like running down a court was like, I've never gotten a pass that good in my life. Like Luka threw 4 or 5 passes in the first quarter of this game that I've said Jokic, and LeBron are the only 3 guys in the league, and Halliburton's close, that can make certain passes. And it's because of their size, vision, but then their strength. Because the ball has to have velocity sometimes when you're throwing it 30, 40 feet in the air, right? And that's what Luka was doing in this game. He's picking the ball up above his head, 40 feet out, and throwing lasers to the opposite corner for threes, to the rim for dunks. Just an absolute, like, gutting. It's what he did to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first quarter. And Gafford and Washington both are recipients of that. So they have to be thinking as that game's going on, and even after the game, man, and go back and watch the film. They got to be thinking to themselves, like, how lucky did we get to get into this situation right now? On a team that I think we're going to start talking about more and more seriously as a legitimate contender in the West.
I do too. I'm a little choppy leg, so stick with me, but I have a stat for you, and this came from NBA University about Josh Green. Over the last 15 games, Josh Green leads the NBA in made corner threes, and he's shooting 47.7% on them. So that to me, like sometimes guys need to have a spot, especially role players, pick a spot and be elite from there. And when you think about Josh Green, I know a lot of people, do you trust the shot? Do you not? Whatever, that's a huge swing factor for him. But sometimes when you add these different pieces, guys get to play the same spot and they know my shots are coming from here and in this way. And I kind of feel that way for a lot of the Mavs players now after this trade, where I watch it and I go, I think guys are going to get consistent looks. And I think that just helps role players like a Josh Green.
No, I completely agree with that. Listen, I was also same, spot up shooter when I was in the league. And I can go down the list of teams I played with and the different guys I played with. And there's no doubt about it. That matters a lot. And I've said it before, and look, I was a guy that, that was what I was paid to do. Josh Green's
Right.
same, but there's other things they're asking him to do. That's part of it. And he's going to have to become more and more specialized, I think, particularly with now, like this is a deeper team talent wise. You're going to have to become really good at knocking that shot down. When you get the ball accurately delivered to you and you get it delivered at the right time, and that might mean literally a quarter of a second, half a second at most, delivered to you earlier, what that means is the difference between either an open or semi-contested shot, which a good shooter is going to shoot a really high percentage on, or a legitimately contested shot in which your percentages drop dramatically. And that's what Luka does, and that's what LeBron does, and that's what Jokic does, and that's what Halliburton does. And those are the guys I think are in a separate category from everybody else. And you saw it on display here. And by the way, we'd be remiss, we haven't really mentioned to this point, how well Kyrie Irving's playing right now. So Kyrie missed that chunk of time. He's come back. He looks fantastic. Now, here's the thing with Kyrie. I will say this. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. The guy, throughout his career, he goes to these stretches where he misses time. He comes back. He's so into it. Like he just, and he's so good. It's ridiculous how talented he is. And he's so into it for a while. And then at some point, he'll out again for a while. So that's just kind of what you got to ride with Kyrie. But there is no denying the talent. And now when you have Luka, Kyrie out there together, and now enough across the board, they've supplemented what the rest of their roster looks like now. More guys that can hurt you, that can stay in their lane and be super effective because of these two great offensive players. So obviously, look, super impressed, both of us, with what we saw on Saturday. And now let's just see what happens here in the last 29 games, because I think Dallas is going to start to be taken more and more seriously, like I said a second ago.
I think what's exciting about Kyrie, they remind me a little bit of the Cavs, where you have Garland and Mitchell, and then you have Mobley and Allen. And together, that's your bread and butter. But being able to split them up to have basically two pick and roll, you always have one of them on the court with an elite pick and roll partner. So when you get Lively back, you're going to have Luka and Lively, and then
Right.
you can go to a bench lineup that's going to have Kyrie and Gafford, and then you have Derek Jones, who's also a phenomenal pick and roll partner, and then PJ Washington, Maxi Kleber. Defenses are never going to have a moment off where it's like, okay, they went to their bad lineups with that group. And and that's what you saw, by the way, in this game. It really was the Kyrie with Gafford and Washington minutes that really killed. Again, all the lineups killed, but that one at the end of the first quarter, end of the third quarter, that with Kyrie and Luka on the bench is when the team really had their biggest runs. So I think that's one of the things about the Mavs that, we're doing most interesting teams. They're definitely going to be on my list of most interesting teams, because I think that they are better than what they have shown so far to this point, and they've looked really good in flashes. Any final thoughts on them?
No, I think what's going to be interesting is going to be once they get Lively back, and I think that's the only challenge left for Jason Kidd is going to be figuring out that rotation and what works best. and making sure that, you're putting the best units out there collectively at a time. That's going to have to play itself out a little bit once they get at full strength. But that was just something to watch, man. It was really absolutely amazing to watch what they did offensively to start this game, and then gave it all up basically because Oklahoma City started playing well, and then to say, okay, let's go on another run here and get up even more than we were early. It's crazy the way that they finished 75 points. I think they had in the second half of the game after getting 71 in the first half. So it's just full throttle, impressive, and I'm excited because I love watching Luka, but I love watching Luka even more when he's got everything at his disposal and you see the full package, because he was so good in the first quarter game. It was an absolute reminder to everyone. I think this is the most unstoppable offensive force in the NBA. With way he can beat you as a scorer and passer. That's the best in one package that we have in this league.
Let's take a break. On the other side, we'll get into the Warriors game, which had a really interesting finish as well. One of the best Curry game winners we've had in a while. And I'll also say one last thing on the Mavericks here. They've won 4 in a row, and they have Washington and San Antonio before the All-Star break. Then a break to acclimate the new pieces. I think things are breaking really, really nicely for the Dallas Mavericks. But we'll get to the Warriors on the other side. First, I want to tell you guys about Factor Meal Kit. Get started on your New Year's resolutions. If you haven't already, you're a little late to the party. But get started with Factor Meal Kits. They're ready-to-eat meal delivery that takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. They have new meals that arrive on their website every single week, chef-inspired, that fit a variety of diets. You can do breakfast, you can do smoothies, you can do juices, and then you could do lunches and dinners that are chef-prepared, that fit the keto diet, vegetarian and vegan diet, protein plus, and a whole bunch of other options. You go on the website, you pick the ones you want, and then they come straight to your door. That's all the planning you need for your meals with Factor Meal Kit. So head to factormeals.com/AllNBA50. That's factormeals.com/AllNBA50 and use promo code AllNBA50 to get 50% off. That's code AllNBA50 at factormeals.com. Also want to tell you guys about the presenting sponsor of today's show, and that is, of course, DraftKings. I did not have a great Super Bowl on DraftKings. I ended up betting Chiefs in the first half, then switching over to Niners in the second half. A perfect storm of bad bets for me, but it was still fun. The NBA now takes all of my attention on gambling on DraftKings for the rest of the year. And right now, if you bet $5 when you sign up, you win $200 instantly in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code ALLNBA. New customers bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings with ALLNBA. The crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 878-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and older, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/basketball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Alrighty, let's get back to it, legs, and talk about the other great game from the weekend, which was the Warriors beating the Suns in incredible fashion. Steph Curry with a, not quite a buzzer beater, but a go-ahead three-pointer that left 0.7 on the clock. This was a back-and-forth game. We had a little bit of jawing back and forth between the two teams. It was intense. We also saw the return of Gary Payton II, which I want to talk about. But what stood out to you in this game?
Man, oh man, I don't know how much time we have because there's so many things that stood out to me. I think you just mentioned Gary Payton. We're going to get to him because that's really important, really, really important. And he reminded you how important, because when guys are out that long, sometimes you do have to be reminded when they come back, like what that brings. And he did. The shot at the end of the game, the pass from Podziemski on that play. It's one of the most cerebral, well executed plays you're going to see any player make, much less a rookie, where he had to place that basketball to give Curry the only chance he had to get his hands on it without it getting stolen. And then the rest, of course, is just stupid what Curry does to spin out of that without dribbling and just fire a shot from that distance. And he credited it after the game to muscle memory, and that's basically true. That is that is millions of jumpers, in your lifetime, knowing where you are at every spot on the court, the confidence to do it, and the perfect stroke to do it. But more than anything, it's an awareness as you're coming out of the spin, where you are and what the distance is. That's what makes that so special, what he did, because there has to be just a nanosecond of your mind and your eyes to visually process where you are right before you shoot it. And that's all you have in that situation. And so that is muscle memory and greatness. That's what you saw right there. So here's my big take from this game. I'm starting to get super interested in Golden State. All right.
Yeah.
Look, getting Gary Payton back, second back, is huge. Huge.
I agree.
His defensive pressure, his athleticism, finishing ability. He's also one of those guys that just generates more juice for the home crowd. The people love him there. He's just played. That was his third game, I think, since December 1st. So, I mean, the guy's been out basically the whole year and comes in and has an immediate impact. There's going to be guards they're going to have to play against here down the stretch of the season. And if they get into the playoffs, whatever that ends up being at the end, there's these top level guards that they're going to absolutely need him to play against some of these guys. So that was huge for me. Wiggins, I've seen a little bit out of Wiggins lately, a little bit more. Kuminga continues to be great, and he was again in this one. Curry's been great all year. It's Klay and Wiggins, right? That's what we keep saying. It's those two guys. Klay continues to be just, man, the game is really difficult for Klay Thompson right now. There's no other way to put it. It looks like it's starting to come a little bit easier to Wiggins right now. That's a great sign. I don't know if they're going to get that extra 10, 15, 20% out of Klay Thompson of just improved play. I don't know anymore. I used to say, yeah, it's a matter of time. He'll go on a little bit of a run. I don't know anymore, honestly. He doesn't look right to me mentally. He doesn't look right from a confidence standpoint. He doesn't look right. Like he's not even feeling the game correctly right now. There's something internally going on with his frustration level, I think, and just he's demoralized. And it's tough. It's tough on a guy this great to be in this situation. So I don't know what's going to happen with Klay Thompson anymore the rest of the year. And if they don't get that out of him, it'll be very difficult to survive. Maybe the play-in, but that'd be it. If they get him back a little bit more and Wiggins continues to get back closer to what he was, they become really interesting now. Getting Peyton back, and even this Podziemski, he's just a winner, man. He makes a lot. And Draymond looked great in this game too. Let's give Draymond credit because he played great in this game as well. They're interesting to me, Adam. And every time you want to get rid of them, or I want to get rid of them, or whoever, they just do something and they just kind of reel you back in. And it revolves around Curry's greatness. Yeah. But now you're looking at it. That's all we were looking at. Now we're looking at more than that with this team. And they're back, to 500, I believe. Yeah, they're 500 now for the first time in a while.
They're right there. Man, there's so much here to get to with this team. For one, I want to start with the Klay thing, even though it's not the biggest story at all to me. But I do think that there is a clarity that has arrived on this team once Steve Kerr came out and finally said, look, we're not always going to close with Klay. We're moving on. There was almost like everybody saw it. Everybody knew it, including Klay himself. But I think that sometimes you need that emotional, hey, we're moving on into a new phase. And while Klay, I think, is still struggling with that personally, I think the rest of the team has slotted into place now of knowing, okay, we can play the way we used to with Podziemski, who, by the way, fills that spot in their closing lineup and plays it really, really well. So I think that is the number one thing that I see from them. And then number two, I just think Gary Payton is such a major piece of this. Obviously, Draymond Green. And when you put both of those guys together, you're going to have a good defense. I mean, yes, they gave up 112 points to Phoenix, but Phoenix, their guys were making their shots. They made them work. It gives you a defensive presence, and it allows you to stay in games so that you can have moments like the one you got from Steph Curry, last night. So for me, I look at this and I go, the last handful of games for the Warriors, but this one in particular, felt like the Warriors we've known for the last several years, and we haven't seen that very often from them this season. I kind of feel like they're getting it back.
I agree. And here's the other thing. They did this on a night. Like, I didn't think that Phoenix played poorly in this game. They didn't shoot the ball particularly well from the three. They didn't get a lot of threes, but like look at, Durant, Beal, and Booker. Beal didn't get a ton of shots. He didn't get to the line. So he only had 15 points, but, pretty efficient, 7 for 16. Booker was really good, 11 for 21 for 32. KD, 10 for 25 for 24. Right? So you get 71 points out of those three guys. So they played pretty well. And yet they still lost. And this was a great, great game, by the way. Like the separation either direction was so narrow the entire game, man.
Yeah.
This isn't what we're talking about in the Dallas game. Like nobody got hit with a sledgehammer in this game. But they both stayed within arm's reach the entire time. And it was just a shootout. And then execution at the end of the game made all the difference. And so this was probably as significant a win as they've had all year, I would say. Yeah. And that's got to feel good where they just were a couple of weeks ago and way they felt about themselves. And now, I don't know, man, this can be something here that they can get on a little bit of a run, get some momentum, hopefully. But it was just so important that they end up winning the game. They've lost. They had the crunch time records. They were talking about it on the air. I mean, no team has played more close games, and they've lost most of them. Right. And so they've been right there. So for them to lose another heartbreaker, like if they play that well, Curry misses that shot, you take some solace in that, I guess. If you're Curry, hey, we played great again.
At this point in the season, but I don't know.
They need, at this point, Adam, they need those to end up as W's. And they did it. They get the shot, and then they had a really bizarre sequence of events on the other end of the floor with 0.7 of a second left after the shot where they foul. Wiggins fouls Booker. Like the ball's just barely in the air because if he fouls him while the inbounder still has it, you're going to go shoot and get the ball back.
Right.
So luckily the ball was in the air, but then it was like, okay, well, how much time went off once Wiggins fouled him? And then they reset it to 0.6, I think. And then they throw it cross court to KD on the last inbounds pass. And Draymond Green just does a great job basically face guarding him. And the ball never really gets there and he fumbled it away. And Draymond had some very choice words for KD. Which I'm pretty good at reading lips and just being around that culture. I have a pretty good idea of the NBA culture. I mean, pretty good idea of what was said right there. So it felt good to him, I'm sure, against that particular player at home. And Draymond played really well in the fourth quarter. Had a lot to do with that. So it was, and also the whole Draymond Nurkic thing, which that's the guy Draymond swung at to get that suspension. And here they were going up against each other, and it was all kinds of jawing going on between those two as well. So it had everything you could want in an NBA game, man. Intensity, trash talking, high-level play, and a dramatic finish. What more can you ask for?
Well, the other thing I want to get to, I want to go back to this Draymond thing with Nurkic, because the other thing that's happening right now for the Warriors is that they're playing small a lot. And obviously small ball, they're the team that invented small ball or really popularized it to the degree that they have because of Draymond. But now you look at it, Looney played 5 minutes in this game, and that's been, something they've been going to, some of these smaller lineups. They're the best at playing small. And last night you get Nurkic, who's one of the biggest guys in the NBA, just physically, size-wise, and he wasn't that big of a factor. Yes, he had he's too small play on Draymond, but at the end of the game, they had to take him out of the game to get back into it. The Warriors have built a lead going at him, really taking advantage of him in the pick and roll and trying to drag him out with those dribble pitches. So they had to take him off the court. And to me, that's the most interesting thing about the Warriors. If you're going to buy Warrior stock and say that they can do the unthinkable and climb all the way back into this and then make a run in the playoffs, it's because you believe that Draymond Green and the guys behind them can play small and handle the bigs in the Western Conference. And I'm not sure they can do that to Jokic. I mean, that's maybe the one guy you look at. But Nurkic is no scrub, and they sure played him off the floor in this game. So that, to me, is the most interesting thing.
Yeah, Draymond, after the game, said, because with that back and forth when Nurkic scored on him in the post and went down and, really shrunk down and pounded the floor. He's literally that small. I just squashed him like a bug. Yeah. Ran down the other end, and immediately Draymond catches the ball and backs him down and scores over him in the paint, right? And he goes down and smacks the floor. It was great. But after the game, Draymond Green said, he said Nurkic outweighs me by 70 pounds. And I was like, wait a second now. Wait a second. How much is Draymond Green listed at? I don't know. I didn't look it up. He's got to be listed at 230?
Probably.
right?
Probably 230. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Nurkic is not a 300-pound player. I'm sorry, he's not 300 pounds. All
Probably
right.
280 though. Maybe he's probably
Yeah,
280.
I thought that was pretty funny. But
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, like, real quick, a little bit off like game topic, but afterwards, what Nurkic said based on Draymond Green's demeanor in this game. Nurkic said it's a shame, it's sad, he didn't learn anything. He's exactly the same. It's a matter of time before he hits somebody else. What do you think? What do you think about what you saw out of Draymond and his emotions, and the fact that he's kind of walking the line a little bit, man? He got a tech in this game, where, hey, he has another outburst later, maybe he's ejected if he gets the second tech. Like, what are you feeling about what Draymond went through, suspended, away from the team, embarrassment, everything that went on with him, comes back, and he's still so demonstrative toward the officials and other players and all that? Do you think that there's a correlation there at all? Or do you think that they're totally unrelated? Like because that's who Draymond's always been, what you saw on Saturday. But what he did to Nurkic obviously really crossed the line. Do you see any correlation there? Like, if you really saw a difference in Draymond, he would be less demonstrative toward officials as well as a means to demonstrate, look, I'm more in control.
I think these things are connected, but not. I disagree with Nurkic that I don't think anything he did. Draymond kicks people, he punches people, he flails, he does those types of things, punches teammates, but the intensity that he plays with does not bother me. Now, those two things, like, you are right that there's a line, and sometimes Draymond can get too close. But I don't think that what Nurkic said, clearly he hasn't won anything. No, you talk trash to him. He talks trash back. That was an intense game. You lost. So for me, I laughed at Nurkic's comments after the game. I don't know if Draymond is, recovered from whatever things were bothering him. I just don't think he has done anything since returning that would lend you to be able to say that, he hasn't learned his lesson or whatever Nurkic was trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of heard what Nurkic is saying, just from the standpoint of, okay, yeah, he didn't punch anybody, but that looked exactly like the same guy emotionally, like at times not in control of his emotions. And that's what it's all about. So I was just curious to get your thoughts on that, because I thought there was a little bit of truth in what Nurkic is saying, just from the standpoint of, I don't see anything different. Like, you'd think a guy that went through that and cost his team that much and knows that he's basically playing for his career right now at this point, that would maybe just go out of his way, not necessarily where you're just up and down the floor all stoic. And in fact, Draymond said, he called Nurkic a quiet guy, and he said, I don't know, I would never be a quiet guy. Quiet guys lose a lot. Something to that effect. I thought was really funny. But it was just like, I don't know. I thought that was an interesting dynamic. And I'll tell you what, based on that little interaction between those two guys, I hope we get a 7-game series out of Phoenix Golden State, man, at some point. I just think that would be so fun because of the history with Durant, the history with Durant and Draymond, Nurkic and Draymond. It's just the greatness across the board. I would love to see that, but I would love to see it if Klay Thompson was just better. And then you'd really have something on your hands to see a series like that.
I don't think we're going to get a series, but it is possible you can get a play-in. I mean, look, I don't think Phoenix is going to fall to the play-in, although at the moment they're tied for that 5, 6, 7 seed. But I just don't see how they would match up in a playoffs unless.
No, you're right. You're right. I was thinking more perfect world type stuff.
Yeah.
You're right. If you Golden State at this point, look, they got to be feeling a lot better about themselves. They have won 7 out of 10. Okay, they've won 4 in a row, and they're getting guys back. So that's got to feel good to them. And now Kerr's got a tough challenge on his hands with the Klay Thompson stuff the rest of the year, baby. How he's going to handle all that, and is Klay gonna, as I expect him to be, as he was in the game on Saturday? Man, I'm watching him on the bench at times, and he's just very supportive teammate. He's just not a moper. He's not going to be moody over there. He's hard on himself, and more than anything else, while this ticks him off, I'm sure, and he's very competitive. I also know that he also knows, like, this is probably what's fair. The way I've played, this is probably what's fair, and I have to rise above it and accept it. It's a very difficult thing for a player to come to terms with, and that's what he's doing. So, yeah, it was great game. One of the best games I watched all year. One of the best finishes I've watched all year. And give me more Warriors right now. I'm having fun watching them.
The one guy we didn't talk about, and we won't have time, we got to move on, but Kuminga continues to impress. I know he's your guy. You called it at the beginning of the year. He's really coming into his own. And another stat from NBA University, over the last 15 games, pretty good sample size, Kuminga is fourth in the NBA in field goals made at the rim, and he's leading the entire NBA in field goal percentage. His ability and his determination to get to the rim lately is what stands out to me. And he has an incredible, not first step, but ability to go from walk to sprint. So when he's bringing the ball up or something, he just lulls you to sleep and then all of a sudden goes. And he's so quick at that. And he's been so tenacious, just trying to like go through or around or through defenders. And he is, honestly, that's his game to me. Just get to the rim at all costs. Something seems to have clicked for him with that. And to me, it changes the dynamic, gives them another punch, to that team that I just really like. We got to keep it moving though, Legs. Let's take our final break. On the other side, we'll go quickly into the teams that you found to be the most interesting after this trade deadline. I find it very interesting. Can't wait to hear your list. We'll go through that. First, I got to tell you guys about the Game Time app. If you're trying to make plans for this weekend or just looking to go to a game somewhere in the NBA, check out the Game Time app. You'll get all those flash deals, last-minute ticket deals. You can even set an alert. Maybe you're looking for the weekend and you see a game on actually, we have the All-Star break this weekend. So maybe it's just this week and you want to keep your eye on a Wednesday or Thursday game. You set the little alert and then it'll give you a push notification whenever the tickets prices have dropped. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ALLNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's ALLNBA. Get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Legs. I challenged you to come up with a list of teams that you are most interested in watching here as we get to the home stretch. We're almost at the home stretch. Who are those teams?
All right, so I had 4 come to mind. 2 of them we've already talked about a lot. Dallas and Golden State. They were 2 of the teams on my list. And so we covered them enough. So we'll talk about the other 2, and they're both from the Eastern Conference. It's going to be one, I think, fairly obvious one is the Knicks for me. Because and here's more to it than just, they got better, they're gonna be interesting. They were already really getting very interesting to me. It's getting this level of depth now is going to be so interesting to watch in this team, because I always felt like after they made the Barrett trade, and I'm not a huge RJ Barrett fan. I understand, he's a good player, but I just thought that the 3 of those guys paired together was going to be tough, and they made the move. Anunoby's a better fit. I always wondered though, like if in any way Jalen Brunson were hobbled or not 100%, and I don't know if this is even possible anymore. He's so good, bottled up by somebody defensively in a playoff series. And then you got Randall. Okay. And then vice versa. Let's say Brunson's fine, but Randall, who's had moments in the playoffs that have been tough to get through. And now I felt like you did give up a more like natural scorer in Barrett, and he played pretty well in some playoff games last year, for a guy that's more of a role player offensively in Anunoby. How are they going to have enough, like in a playoff series, if one of those 2 star players are struggling? Yeah. Well, they just got 2 other guys that have a pretty good impact on that end of the floor, right? So that goes without saying. But here's the challenge. I'm very curious to see now, what does Tom Thibodeau do with some of this depth and rotation? And specifically, Precious Achiuwa is a guy to me that has played his way heavily into this rotation. But now you added Bogdanovich. And they're going to be playing a lot of the same position. And look, this is Thibodeau's problem. And all coaches will say, yeah, that's a good problem to have. Well, most coaches, no, not really. They don't want to have 12 guys there that all deserve playing time, to be honest with you. They don't. They'd rather give me a really solid 8. I'll stretch it to 9 if I have to. If you're going 10, it's really difficult. You're probably not good enough because that top 9 isn't good enough. So what do you think about that? Like, that's going to be interesting to me to see how that rotation pans out. Right now, Anunoby's out. Randall's out. All right. So you just added 2 new guys that just come in. You got to figure out how the best way to work that. But to me, the New York Knicks have played themselves into a team that their ceiling is conference final. And I didn't feel that way about them before the trading deadline. I can tell you that.
For me, maybe even higher. I really love the Knicks team. But the thing for me is,
you're coming out right now here live on the air and predicting the Knicks to beat the Celtics. That is a big statement, Adam.
Different from a prediction.
That is a big statement.
It's not a prediction. You said ceiling. Ceiling is the best possible scenario. For me, their best possible scenario, I don't want to put a cap on it just yet. The only problem I have with the take you had is about the Knicks is that I'm not sure we're going to see it because of Randall's return, even a Mitchell Robinson, just because
No,
I
that's
think we're
another
not
guy.
going to.
Yeah, I didn't mention Mitchell Robinson, right?
So I think we're just going to have, we might not actually get to see them over this next 30 games, this final 30 games. We might never get to see it until right at the very end. So that's the only reason. But I agree with you that they're still going to be compelling even without Randall. But that it'll be a race against time. All right, what's your other team?
Other team has to be the Bucks.
Okay, yeah.
Going into the season, I thought after the acquisition of Lillard, and we wanted to see how that played out. I thought that it was two teams clearly better than the rest of the conference. And because at that point, we hadn't really seen what it would look like with Tyrese Maxey now like elevating to that role in this status. And, we had to see that. Obviously, he proved it. So Philly was in the mix there for a while. But at the beginning of the year, it was Bucks Celtics, man. Based on just what they added. It's like, wow, this is going to be awesome. 2-team horse race. And then, the Bucks just from the very beginning were just like, we kept asking, right? What's going on with the Bucks, man? Like they can't guard anybody. This is getting sort of ridiculous here. What's going on with this team? And so it led to a guy getting fired at 30-13 or whatever his record was.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
30-13, I think. And they fired him because they're that concerned about not the adjustments not being made on that end. And I thought some of his personnel based that I don't know how they're going to address that. Well, they tried to address it somewhat at the trading deadline with Patrick Beverley. And they also made a change to bring in Doc Rivers, a proven guy that's won a championship in this league, been coached hundreds of playoff games, and just more of a veteran presence on that bench that maybe can get a little bit more out of these guys because you get more respect, make them more accountable without getting pushback, that kind of thing. And, he comes in, he'll get nowhere near judgment of Doc Rivers, but, he goes 1-4 in his first 5. They blow out Charlotte the other night. But I'm really interested to see, man, what impact exactly does Doc Rivers have on this team? Am I going to look at them 10 games from now differently than I do right now, which is incredibly vulnerable? I'm not sure I would pick them right now in a 7-game series against the Cleveland Cavaliers or a healthy Knicks team.
Right.
I don't know that I would. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I don't have to do it, so I don't have to go on record here. I'm just saying that's how much it's changed for me. Like, it's not a foregone conclusion anymore. Who's going to play the Celtics in the conference finals? And I think that's what I want to see now going forward. I'm going to be so interested to watch the Bucks night in and night out to see what impact does Doc have, and does Patrick Beverley bring the toughness and just the want to and the energy and desire and passion for the defensive end of the floor? Does that help this team at all?
Yeah. The one team you didn't mention that I find interesting is Miami Heat. I'm kind of curious to see what they do. They have not looked very good lately. They made the big trade. They're just the one team that I'm curious if they can throw their hat in the ring here and remind us. I mean, they had a no Jimmy Butler on Sunday, almost beat Boston. It was a very impressive display from them, even in a loss. But I'm just curious to see if they can become a team that going into the playoffs, we wouldn't be surprised if they had another run like the one they had last year. Right now, I would be surprised, I think, just because I haven't seen a lot from them lately. But they're the one team you didn't mention in either conference, and that I find pretty interesting.
No, that's fair. And neither one of us said Cavs, by the way. And I don't know. And I don't know for you. I'm not going to speak for you, but for me, the reason I didn't say the Cavs is because I feel like I've got a really good grip on what they are. Like I pretty much know what that team is. And the question for me for them is going to be Mitchell in the moments when he's going to have to be great for them. Yeah. That's what it's going to come down to. There's no question their defense gives them a chance every night, and they've got plenty of shooting, and they've got 3 really good guards. So, but I feel like I kind of know. I still don't know exactly what the Knicks can become. I don't know what the change is going to be with the Milwaukee Bucks. I actually disagree with you a little bit on the Heat. I know they're still going to be dangerous. And I've said this before. They have Spoelstra. And that always gives me hope that they're going to figure out a way. He's going to get everything that he can out of this team. But there's something missing about them this year when I watch them. So I didn't give them as an answer. Actually, I would have said the next team I would have said is probably Indiana. Once I get Halliburton and Siakam together for a much longer period of time, I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah. As we start to do this, there's so many teams. I mean, New Orleans, I know we've talked about them a lot this year. You could even say Orlando, who's had some injury, bad injury luck that I think disguises just how good they can be. So the NBA is in a good spot, man. This final 30 games is going to have a lot of movement, a lot of jockeying for position that I think is going to be good. And there's just a lot of teams I'm curious to see what they become. That does it for today. A very plagued Monday for us with some technical difficulties behind the scenes, but we made it through, Legs. We made it through, and I thought we had a great show. A lot of good discussion today.
Yeah, well, and the games over the weekend dictated that for us. It's always nice when it writes a good script for us because there was some really compelling stories coming out of the weekend. And now we head into tonight. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow.
Can't wait for it. If you're new to the show, make sure to subscribe. Check us out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, every single week, talking hoops. We appreciate you watching. Hit that like button for us on the way out.
Wait, Adam, read the super chat.
Oh, super chat from Cedric. Thank you. What are the odds of a 4-way tie come the playoffs? I'm guessing he's talking, Legs, about the top of the Western Conference, which at the present, 4 teams separated by half a game. I think it's possible.
Definitely possible. Certainly never happened. I'm certain of it in the history of maybe any team sport where you had 4 teams at the top all tied. I have a feeling something's going to happen. Something's going to separate those teams, whether it's an injury or something like that. There's going to be something that's going to happen to get a little bit of clarity there. It is fascinating to me, though. We were sitting here this late into the season not knowing really how that's going to play out in terms of seeding. I never expected the Clippers to be in the mix for the number 1 seed because I didn't think it was going to be important to them. And I figured guys would miss time and they would just try to get themselves ready by March 15th for a 1-month run into, before the playoffs started. Now you look up, Clippers might end up with home court advantage throughout the playoffs or throughout the Western Conference playoffs, which would be amazing.
Well, there you go, Cedric. We got it in at the buzzer for you. Thanks, everybody. Hit that like button on the way out.
All silly like the mayor.